Welcome to today's webinar, Leveraging Google-Based Digital Products for DNA Testing Sales, is presented by Kenny Stalker, VP of Sales and Partnerships with V Digital Services. The presentation slides for today's session are available for download on the lower portion of the GoToWebinar toolbox under Handouts. We are recording this session and will include the recording link and slides in a follow-up email. Questions may be submitted throughout the webinar using the GoToWebinar toolbox on the right side of your screen under the Questions tab. We will answer the questions submitted following the presentation. Thank you for joining today's session.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kenny, as Amy introduced me. Nice to meet you all. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I am going to run you through two probably easiest to understand Google-based marketing options related to DNA testing. I'm going to jump out of the screen real quick here and just show you kind of a very specific sample test that I did. I'm in the Denver, Colorado area. But what I did is I just did a quick paternity testing near me, and we'll get into this a little bit further. But what I'm going to talk about are the ads that show up at the top here. These are called Google Search or Google AdWords, or also known as Google Pay-Per-Click. This down here is your local SEO or Google Business Profile. You may also know it as your Google My Business page. They just rebranded to the Google Business Profile. And there are also ads that you can do specifically within this that are called Google Local Ads. If you scroll down further, there's an area down below called Organic SEO, or the organic listings, and those are related much more specifically to people who are doing a little bit more studying, trying to educate themselves, and are going to visit your website. Whereas these two up here that we're going to focus on are traditionally accessed by people who are planning on visiting a business fairly quickly, sometime in the next 2 to 48 hours traditionally. Okay, so back to here. I want to start very quickly here just within the customer journey. And what we're going to focus on today is the action portion of paid search ads and local SEO. But I wanted to give you a quick overview of just kind of the consumer buying funnel as a whole so you understand where these live, or where the two that we're going to talk about live. Many of you may do Facebook and Instagram ads. Those are very awareness based. And what I mean by that is, I'm not going to go to Facebook or Instagram specifically to look for a specific business. I may follow businesses, and I may look to see what they're doing, but I'm not going to go to Facebook or any type of social site specifically to find a new business, to research a new business, to look for something near me. That's not what it's used for. What it is used for is to target people who are within a specific audience group. So if you're trying to reach, somebody who does daycare for dogs, or you're trying to reach somebody who may have a job that may not have great insurance benefits, things along those lines, you could do awareness-based advertising and run that on Facebook or Instagram in that way. But again, very top of the funnel, awareness-based. You're not reaching them when they have a need right that moment. You're more branding to them and creating awareness based on the category that you're in. If you are doing advertising, say on YouTube or any other video-based programmatic type tool, you're going to reach people a little bit more specifically because they're on YouTube to look at something that they're very specifically interested in at that point, whether they're watching videos on DNA testing or other types of testing, or asking how those work or how long it takes to get the tests back. They may go on there just to look at videos, but they're definitely showing interest. Doesn't mean they need it right then, but they're definitely showing interest. But if your ad shows up at that point, you're reaching them because they're in a little bit more of a thoughtful space at that point. So better than awareness in the interest stage. Organic SEO, what I was talking about when I scrolled down on that live search page, is when somebody is really kind of looking in that decision-making stage, but what they're doing is they're collecting information. They're educating themselves, and they're trying to make a decision. Usually means that they're making a decision sometime in the next 2 weeks. And then what we're going to talk about today, paid search and local SEO, very much in that action stage. Then you have the loyalty stage at the bottom, which is predicated on you may collect emails of folks, and you may send email exchanges out to them. They are your loyal customers. You may also have people that follow you on Facebook or Instagram or other social entities. Those is a loyalty play, and you're speaking very specifically to your current customer at that point. Okay. And again, please throw questions out there as I roll along if you have them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the different campaigns here, kind of visually here. And up here, you'll see AdWords, and these are the ads that specifically show up at the top. And there's these Google local ads that will show up in here. If you actually click into more places, if somebody is looking at the Google search listings and click into more places, these ads also have the ability to show up here, and they can have up to 2 of them. These ads show up more specifically at the top just based on your search term. These ads here show up more specifically based on the search term, but also kind of in concert with you making a search term based on near me, or use any type of proximity, whether you're going to put in a city or you're going to put in a zip code, things along those lines, where it becomes more geographically based. The reason that I'm focusing on these 2 options is both of these advertising type options at the top, you are not charged unless somebody clicks. So if somebody does a search and they come up with these visuals, just these impressions is what we call them, but nobody interacts with them, they don't click on them to go to the website, you're not charged a thing. So you actually get the impression for free and you get some visibility, which is great. Same with this ad here. And then the local SEO portion, or the Google My Business page or Google Business Profile, is they'll show up in listings, and you can also show up on maps, and we'll talk about that a little bit more specifically right now. So when you're looking at your Google Business Profile or that Google My Business page, it's a page that Google is sending to you that looks like this. My gut is all of you know very much about your Google My Business page or Google Business Profile, but I've looked at many of the folks who are on this call, and you're all using it very, very differently. Some you're using it really well, some of them, but some of you are definitely missing some options that you could put in place. What's great about your Google My Business page, and bad about it also, is that Google is doing their best to keep a consumer who is searching for anything geographically or near me based. They're trying to keep you interacting with Google themselves, either with an ad or with the Google My Business page, and less so with your website. The good and bad about that is this page works really, really well. And for the people that really go in and look at their Google Insights, you'll see that it gets a ton of traffic, a ton of visibility. People spend a lot of time clicking through from your Google My Business page to your website. They click for directions to come to you, which actually is creating foot traffic, or may call you specifically. So the good news is that it works as a very specific business, an extra landing page for you, instead of your website as an extra landing page. Bad news is it doesn't send you to the actual landing page itself on your website. But in my mind, if someone is looking for a brick and mortar business to go to based on a need that they're exhibiting right now, and they find this page and you become visible, that's great news for you. In the grand scheme of things, you want that foot traffic, and this helps create foot traffic. Okay. Why do you want to focus on local SEO? Almost 50% of all searches are local. They have some type of what's called a local intent. They are using that near me term, by me, close to me, putting in zip codes, putting in cities, whatever the heck it may be. It's really cost effective. Whatever you do on this page, whatever you add to this page, and when I talk about that, adding things like product suites, when you guys do posts, things along those lines, they stay there. We call that being evergreen. If you're doing any type of advertising, the advertising works when you're doing it. As soon as you stop advertising, the customers stop coming in. Your Google My Business page is always there, and the more that you can add to it, the more visibility that you can give to it, the more detail you can offer from a keyword perspective, the better off it's going to work. The more that you can do on Google Maps and make sure that you're ranking on Google Maps, and there's things that you can do there by putting backlinks on there and things along those lines that will help you generate foot traffic. And foot traffic really is the best thing to think about this. Google has found very specifically with their algorithms that people who who click on the direction portion of your Google My Business page, roughly, depends on the marketplace, but between 55 and 65% of those people traditionally go to that location within the next 24 to 48 hours. So it really is a traffic driver. So it's showing that 3 out of 4 people traditionally convert at some point at a brick and mortar location. What is the real value of your Google My Business page? This donut graph kind of will give you a feel. This little yellow sliver you show here is branded. So if you're Burger King and you're hoping that you're going to show up if people are looking for McDonald's, this little yellow line will show you that. So if me as a consumer does a search for McDonald's near me, it's going to definitely, it being Google, is definitely going to bring up McDonald's as a search option for me. But if there's any possibility that it brings up Burger King just because McDonald's sells hamburgers or Burger King sells hamburgers, so it looks to them as somewhat alike, that's considered that you have a brand, you managed to get some branding visibility. Doesn't happen a ton because Google, if someone is searching very specifically for a business, they're going to try to highlight that business, and other businesses like it much higher on the ranking scale. So if there are a number of different, say, fastest lab tests now in a marketplace, it's going to bring those 3 up first and probably not going to bring up a competitor. But if there's a possibility that you do come up, that's a kind of a great extra for you that you're being seen as branded. This direct portion means that people have searched for your business name specifically. So if I search any lab test now directly, that shows the number of people who actually interacted with the Google My Business page because I used that business name. The real value of your Google My Business page or Google Business Profile is discovery. Discovery means that the consumer has done a search, but they haven't made a determination what business they want to go to at that point. They're open. They're looking for options, so they put in more general searches that are stating more like DNA testing near me or paternity testing near me. That's all they've put in there, no business name. And you'll see here that at least with this, and traditionally we see anywhere from 65 to 95% of all the search discovery being discovery specifically and not having to do with direct or branded. So if what you're looking to do is get in front of people who have not made up their mind of the business they want to go to, that's where your Google My Business page really, really shines, okay? What can you do specifically on your Google Business Profile / Google My Business page? And I'm sorry I'm interchanging those, but they literally just made that change and it's hard for me to get past Google My Business. One of the best things that you can do is create those product menus. And when I was showing that on this live shot here, let me go into this one. You'll see I clicked into one here. This actual location did not put any type of, you can see down here that they have a lot of reviews and they're doing postings, but they're not taking advantage of the menu. Let's see if I can find let's say here at Any Lab Test Now. So you'll see here, Any Lab Test Now has actually gone in and they have created products for each one of the things that they focus on. And do they have one in here for DNA? They do. So they have a number for DNA. The reason that you want to use these or work with a company that can help you build these out and research what they need is that Google, as we all know, is built on search. And the more that you can have in here based on that type of service that somebody is searching for, the more Google is going to determine that you're an expert in that. If you don't have those in there, you'll see that what Google is going to focus on is going to be just the overview of your business. And the overview of your business area is not that large. You can't put every single type of test in there that you do. So you need to take advantage of building out these product suites so Google can really associate you with all those additional keywords, okay? So that's one of the best things that you can do to really help with expanded or enhanced keyword research visibility, okay? If you are posting on Facebook and you are posting on Instagram or you're posting on Yelp or any place else, you need to be sure that you're posting on your Google Business Profile as well. You can do the same thing that I was talking about with those product suites, is you can do very specific postings based on promotions or specials. Obviously, COVID's been a huge deal for all the testing facilities in the US, if that's something that you've embraced. And the more that you could have in there about you were accepting COVID testing or you were doing COVID testing and you were talking about the lines or cues that you have in place, the more that you can have those keywords and the more that you can show the consumer that you're really embracing their needs, the better off you're going to be. So embrace this for that reason. It will help with keywords. 2, it gives the consumer more to look at. And 3, Google just loves that you're embracing and interacting with their Google My Business page format, and they will rank you higher for that. The next things are the service build-outs. Google obviously allows, I'm going to go run back, well, let's just jump back to here real quick. If we look at this location here, you'll see that it shows that it's a drug testing service in Thornton, Colorado. You want to make sure that you are showing up as the correct service for that, depending on what you want to be. And there are a whole bunch of different options that you can pick from. If you're just a DNA testing facility, you'd want to make sure that it's just that. But one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you look at that highlighted category that is seen kind of visually from square one that we're showing here. This is kind of your main category. But you have the ability in the back end of your Google My Business page or your Google Insights to then add other opportunities. So you can have 4 or 5 other kind of subcategories, and you definitely want to keep those subcategories updated and make sure that you have them in place. You'll see that we've kind of looked at it here. One of the things that we do on our end is we will actually look at your area and we'll do research in your area for what seems to work the best in your area, what you're seeming to get the most search volume for based on certain types of tests. And then we will look at how people are searching, and you'll look at your primary category, say as a medical laboratory, and then you look at your secondary categories just to make sure that those are in there, again, from that keyword perspective, or depending on how the individual consumer is searching, what keywords they're using. That is going to influence what Google is looking at. And if you've only put in medical laboratory and you haven't put anything else in here like clinic or paternity testing or anything along those lines, or drug testing, if that's what you want to be known as, you are going to be missed, or you aren't going to be ranked nearly as high. Okay. If you're looking at a couple of blanks here, it's because it actually had a company name in based on the search test that we did here. If you optimize your Google My Business page with consistency, you will definitely see views and clicks increase related to the number of views you see on maps, the number of times you come up in listing views. It will help increase your visibility with Google as well as Bing and Apple. One of the things that's done very specifically for if you work with a company that does Google-based or GMB-based services, is they will also work very consistently with outside business directories. And when I say outside business directories, I'm talking about Foursquare and MapQuest and Facebook. There are all these other online business directories that Google favors. And the reason they favor them is, keep in mind that Google has to make if somebody does a search, Google has to return a result for them in between 1 and 2 seconds. So one of the things that Google does is they will consult outside business directories. These are in essence the online version of the old Yellow Pages, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them in the US. But Google every single month will determine which directories are getting the most traffic, and they will consider those to be their favorite business directories. And they will look to see if businesses are associated, ranked on all those directories, whether they have all their information correct on those directories, whether they have details about what they do on those directories, an overview of the business on those directories, and whether all the information on there matches. And the businesses that have the most information correct on those directories, Google will actually highlight and consider to be more authoritative in the space, just because those businesses have taken the time to fulfill and place themselves on those directories and then monitor them to be sure that they're all right. And if you're working with a company that does that, they will take care of that for you every single month. And then if they're good at it, they will also put you into aggregators. And aggregators will look for other business directories that are specifically related to your category. So it could be medical, it could be directories that are related to the city that you're in. It could be blog type directories that offer business listings and such in them. And then they'll put you in an aggregator that also just gets you on a whole bunch of other business directories, because as I said, Google will change who they're favoring every single month depending on the amount of traffic they get. So the more directories you can be on, the more authoritative Google will look at you. Okay. Any questions at all that I can cover specifically on local SEO? I have some other quick slides in here that I'm not going to run through. I think it'll be good for you to read through it yourself, but these are quick tasks of kind of based on what I went over, what you'd want to do to make sure that your GMB page or Google Business Profile page is as top-notch as it can be. And it really is making sure that you've optimized your listings, making sure that you're looking at those business directories that I was talking about, those top business directories. And again, they change, so you have to stay on top of them. Looking at adding citations on a whole bunch of other directories and on Google Maps and GPS type approaches. Schema code is a quick overview of code that actually goes on your website that speaks more consistently to your Google Business Profile, lets them speak together more easily, so Google can look at that, and it can look at your web page to see if your web page offers significantly more information than your GMB page does, and traditionally it will. So it's great code to have. Reviews, our goal is to have folks get their best organic reviews at the local level, really work with customers at the local level, but there are companies that you can work with to increase your reviews. But without question, respond to all your reviews, positively or negatively. Positive or negative reviews, you should respond to all of them, because I think quite often we want to respond to negative reviews. Those are the ones that we feel like we have to interact with. People actually give you a great review, love interaction with you as well. You can create a separate individual location landing page through Google that Google will favor to a point. It just allows you to put additional information online that Google can pull from that's a little bit more keyword based and may have additional information in addition to what your website has. You should have really blown up frequently asked question pages, and we will often tell people to put in what are the top 10 or 15 questions that you get most consistently when people call you, and actually put those in your FAQs. That will show up in searches because those 10 to 15 questions usually match what people are searching for consistently. We talked about that menu build out. We talked about making sure that you're doing postings just like you do on Facebook. Backlinks are links that live on Google Maps that help Google, if somebody actually is in their map versus in a listing, figure out that you're looking for keywords on the maps related to the type of business you are. And then you really should look at reporting and audits that Google is sending you every single month. If you've signed, you should get an email from them just with your Google Insights, and if not, you should make sure that that's something that you sign up for. So any questions at all that I can answer specifically on your Google My Business page / Google Business Profile, and kind of the importance of making sure that that is as optimized consistently as possible? Nope. Okay.
Thank you, Kenny. This is awesome. I do have a question just to kick it off and encourage everyone to put your questions in that questions tab. Kenny's an excellent resource to help market your local DNA business, and so he'll have some good insight. The first one I have is when you put up the product services on your Google My Business page, does that also show up in the shopping links that you see on Google, you know, at the top where it says like news, images, shopping? Does that show up there too?
That does not. That is specifically, that is a portion of Google Shopping. So Google has a bunch of different types of campaigns you can do, paid campaigns. One are those traditional AdWords campaigns, two are those Google local campaigns. Then you can do a Google Shopping campaign, which to do that, you have to sync in with Google on their retail side, and they have to have access to your back-end online store. And once they have that access, you can do shopping ads. They can work really well. Shopping ads for you guys, if you're actually mail ordering them, that's great, but the Google Shopping is traditionally considered more of an e-com approach.
Wonderful.
Okay.
it looks like we had another question come in.
I do see it. Let's see from Judy. How do you add more services right under the reviews? Facet Labs in Wilmington says, drug testing services love to add DNA. Judy, I think probably the best thing to do is I'd love to chat with you about it. And I can do it free of charge. If you'd like to reach out to me on the side, we can definitely do that. But it's a process to show you kind of where that's done, because you'd have to have access to your Google My Business page to do it. Okay.
Okay, and I have one other question. Can anyone get access to the Google Analytics for their website? How do you go about setting up something like that to track who is visiting your website? What, keywords people are searching for? Can anyone get a Google Analytics account?
Anybody definitely can. That's something that is fairly easy to set up on your website. Our team does it for a $300 charge, where they will actually set up Google Analytics on your website, and they will actually then link in any campaigns. So if you're doing social campaigns or you're doing Google campaigns, they'll actually link them all up. And it's a great resource for you to have, so you can see, are people coming in from organic? Are they coming in direct? Are they coming in from the social you're doing? Are they coming in from emails that you're sending out? It's a great resource for you to have, and really can help you make decisions down the line.
Great.
Okay.
And a reminder, you can also continue to send questions over to Kenny, and we'll get those answered. One other question I have is the folks that V Digital Services has worked with, that has developed this robust Google My Business page and maybe some other SEO. What are some things that you're hearing from your target audience where they're stating, hey, this really helped my business grow X%, or I'm getting more leads? What have you heard from the folks that you all work with?
Well, the last 2 years have been interesting, because the vast majority of the labs we've worked with have diverted the vast majority of their budget to COVID testing, if they're doing that type of testing. We're seeing now that they're having to go back to kind of the traditional business model that they had before COVID hit. And if we're talking specifically about DNA testing, I'm going to be very transparent, is really, it's one of the most interesting testing options that we work with any labs at all. There are, as I'm sure many on this call, if not all of you know, there seem to be very specific months in each year that DNA testing is more prevalent. And it's usually between 6 and 7 months. I'm sure, Amy, you guys probably see it even just on orders from your end. We found that a lot of it seems to stem as people are getting tax returns back, so on and so forth. So number one, we will work with folks on budgets that actually take advantage of that. And what we do very specifically is, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later when we talk about the ad portion, we will send a mid-month overview of what we're seeing from your campaigns, and then we'll send an end-of-month report. And in that end-of-month report, one of the things we like to look at most specifically is conversions. And what I mean by conversions is, when you set a campaign up on your site, we want to see, one, whether people actually call you from the ads, or two, whether they're filling out a form from the ads. And we're actually able to put in a tracking mechanism to do that, as I'm sure many of you have used. The goal with that is to determine the conversion portion of it. We don't care whether we get a ton of traffic to the site if it's not converting. So the goal becomes, let's run DNA testing based ads, and let's even break them up: immigration versus paternity versus sneak peek, so on and so forth, all those different types of things. Let's see which work and which don't. And we define by work by, are you getting those conversions? And then more transparency is, we know that if somebody calls you, doesn't necessarily mean that they come in. So we really try to work closely with you on, okay, we see that you had 12 conversions from your DNA ads this month. How many DNA tests did you guys actually fulfill on? Did you fulfill on 3? Did you fulfill on 4? And of those, did you ask each one of them how they found you? Were they a referral? Did they come in because they already knew about you? Did they come in because they saw the Google My Business page? Did they come to you because they actually saw an ad? That's not the perfect way to do it, because the vast majority of people say, I saw you on Google, just because it's a default, as it may be. but our goal really is to determine how many calls did you get and how many did you do? And if you spent $500 that month, what was your ROI? And if we get to the point that we determine that it's not working, we stop. And I'll make it very clear, of the labs that we work with in the US, DNA testing works well for about 70% of them. And there's a 30% of them that it hasn't worked well for, and they run other types of testing and it does work well. But for some reason, DNA testing just does not work well at their location. But you have to do some testing to actually see whether it's going to work. And you may have to do some testing to determine, okay, there's 6 months out of the year that it will work. And we're going to go dark or do a much lower level, spend level or budget at that point, and then stick to that. That answer
Great.
that?
Thank you. We had one more question come in before you move on to your next section.
Okay. Let's see. I added to Google My Business profile for my mobile-only testing service. The page only shows up on Google Maps and not on the web. Since I do not have an address, brick or mortar, that is why it's not showing up on the standard page. Have you looked to, I guess, Dominic, again, I'd love to talk with you kind of offline. We've worked with mobile testing places who we've often done it if they just do mobile testing or they're working to build out their brick and mortar store. And we have managed to actually get an actual GMB page up for them if they can give us some form of address, even if it's a PO box. So we should, again, talk offline. Feel free to get in touch with me because we have managed to get that up and moving if it has an associated website and such, so we can show Google that, yes, it's a mobile service. And I'll give you, for instance, we work with a lot of companies that all they do is outbound service, like plumbers. Plumbers have a physical address, but they don't actually take walk-in customers, at least the most of them don't. So we do more of a radius, and that's probably what you're seeing on maps, but we usually can, about 95% of the time, get an actual GMB page up. So contact me, let's see if we can help you. Okay. Anything else, or should I move on to Google ad campaigns?
I think we're good to move on to ad campaigns. Thank you.
Okay, great. So back to the ad campaigns. Google offers a number of different types, and I'm going to focus on this term PPC again because that's my favorite thing about anything with Google. Any other ads you do, if you do them on Facebook, if you do anything programmatic, if you do radio, if you do TV, there's a very specific just set cost, whether or not you're getting engagement with the ads. And that's what I love about pay-per-click, and whether it is an AdWord ad, whether it's a Google display ad, whether it's a Google local ad, you're not charged unless they actually engage with the ad. And that's why we love it. So PPC does boost traffic to your site. It'll boost that interest. You know that it's interest related to somebody who's actually showing a need, so it's not looky-loos. It's somebody that's showing interest. We don't know what that modicum of interest is, but it's usually a fairly high rate of interest. It allows you to analyze the ad performance in real time. We're able to see how many impressions we served, how many people clicked, and how many people converted. And we can also see what percentage of that audience you reached. And what I mean by that is you can have a budget based on, say, DNA testing, and you will have a campaign set up just for DNA testing. And we'll be able to tell, based on Google algorithms, what percentage of that audience you were able to reach based on that budget. So you may reach 15 of every 100 people that search, you may reach 50. So you're always able to tell very specifically, can you add more budget? Or you do have a pretty good cross section of being able to reach 30 to 50% of the total market who's searching at that time. And just so you know, the search volume will go up and down depending on what's happening. COVID is a perfect way to look at that. Tons of searches for COVID right after the holidays, and then it's really gone into a trough at this point. As I said, you only pay for clicks. Why do people click? 75% of people say they click on ads because they expect it to answer their question. So some of that really comes down to, we have to make sure the ads are built correctly with the right text. Make sure the ads are set up within Google to actually be dynamic. And what dynamic means is we will allow Google to change the text to more consistently match what the consumer was searching for. So if they've used slightly different keywords or slightly different phrasing, we can actually have Google dynamically change the ad to really match that a little bit more, which will make it more appealing to the consumer. Mobile versus desktop, 70% of all paid search impressions are on mobile. One more reason to make sure that your site is really set up for mobile. Does it look good on mobile? Is it loading quickly? If it doesn't load quickly, that will really affect the ability for the people to get through to the site. And on mobile, people expect things to load much faster than they do on desktop. ROI, return on investment. Google pay-per-click ads on average see an ROI of about 200%. With DNA testing, we usually see an ROI of between 125 and 200%, but overall about 200% for all their categories. Ad blockers. What's great about the AdWord ads is that if you're trying to reach somebody with traditional advertising, almost 30% of US adults use ad blockers of some form on their computers. And on their phones, which means that if they're on websites or they're on apps, those ads are being blocked. But if they actually go in to do a Google search, they can't block those ads at the top because that's part of the Google results. You're going to reach those people regardless. Okay. So what is a search ad? I think you guys probably know what they look like, and I showed you on the other screen. But this shows you kind of different ways that they look, and you'll see these, this Any Lab Test Now. They really, they did more on their ad than this one did. And I put this one in there. It didn't have any of these extra buttons on here. You want to make the ad as easy for people to use as possible, whether it is a phone number that they can click on quickly, whether it's a request of appointment directly from this, making sure that you have information in there related to the keywords that you're looking at. They have additional options that you can click on here. This one here really didn't do much. It was showing, it came up under paternity test, but when you looked at it, it didn't have anything. I mean, it talks about urine and hair, but that sounds more drug testing related. So they came up because somewhere within their information, they show that they do DNA testing, but their ad itself doesn't really speak to that. This ad does more. If I'm looking for a paternity test, I'm probably much more likely to click on this ad than I'm going to click on this ad. So you need to make sure that the ads are really relevant. It needs to trigger what the user is looking for, okay? And it's really using these pieces here. Make sure you're talking about what makes you different. Free consultation. You do or don't take insurance. Making sure that you're using all the extra extensions, and that's what these are, okay? If you're preparing a campaign, what you're looking at is you have your AdWords account or your business manager account, and you're going to have campaigns. The way I'd look at this is this campaign here could be a DNA campaign. This campaign here could be a drug testing campaign. You don't want them together because you really want to make sure that Google has the ability to focus just on DNA and not look at both of them together, because Google traditionally will start to ebb and flow to the one that's getting the most interest. So if you combine these into one campaign and drug testing is getting just more search volume, there's a pretty good chance Google is going to push all of your budget to that campaign, and you're going to get very little visibility on DNA. But if you do have a standalone DNA campaign, then you want to create an ad group that's maybe paternity and a separate ad group that's maybe sneak peek, and then you'll create a whole bunch of different ads within them that are related to paternity, and anything else related to that portion of the ad group, anything related to sneak peek, but again, make them very, very unique and different, okay? Campaigns help us control the network and the budget and the geographic location, so we can know exactly what they're doing, what we're focusing on, making sure the keywords really match that ad group as it may be. It allows us to really do a good job of segmenting the services and allocating the budgets very specifically, hence what I was talking about, DNA versus, say, drug testing. Allows us to quickly turn things off if something isn't working in one campaign. So let's say sneak peek is just performing really poorly, but the paternity one is performing, really, really well. We can turn that one off really easily without having to create a new campaign because they were all in a singular campaign. It's cleaner. It really allows us to understand what's happening with your budget and look at all the tracking to see that things are working out really, really well there, okay? So campaigns is just a quick overview of campaign. It's a set of ad groups that contain ads, keywords, and bids, whereas your ad groups are the set of all the keywords, more specifically broken down within those campaigns. And then the ads are that text creative within those ad groups. And then the targeting is that where you might be looking for very specific geographic targeting or demographic targeting and very specific keywords within there. Okay. If you're managing a campaign, our recommendation is don't just set it and forget it. Google will do a lot of good things, but Google will start to ebb and flow to what's working best. You need to look at those ebb and flows to determine whether you need to break things out. So you should have multiple strategies for different markets. I don't know how many people on this call have multiple locations, but as I was saying earlier, DNA works really, really well. I'll give you, for instance, I work with a location that has 3 locations in California. They are all within 40 minutes of each other, but they perform very, very differently. One location works really, really well for DNA. The other one doesn't, but that location works really well for STD testing. And unless you really break them up by market and have individual budgets that are put together by that market, you're not going to know that. If you have different locations in different marketplaces where the population might be different, or it's a more competitive factor in that area, you have to account for that. This same California location does not have to spend nearly as much in one location as they do for another location, because there's more competition in their second location, so the cost per click goes up just because they have more people bidding against them. Make sure you have a really thorough list of keywords and ad groups so you can really look at them and you can update them really, really well. You need to look at your campaigns consistently to see what negative keywords you need to add. Like, for instance, ancestry DNA. If people are looking for ancestry or any of the kind of big swabby type, things that they're going to use to try to find cousins, lost cousins, and so on and so forth, for the most part, you guys don't do that. So anything that says ancestry DNA or anything related to that, we want that to be a negative keyword to make sure that that doesn't pop up, because if that does pop up, if somebody's looking for ancestry DNA test and you do pop up and they click on it, you're going to pay for that. But as soon as they get to your website, they'll say, oh, this isn't ancestry, I need to go someplace else, and you will pay for that click. So it's really making sure that you look at those keywords and looking even at the areas from a geographic perspective. Are people clicking from areas outside that you really feel that you should ratchet down the radius or the zip codes that you're looking at because you think you're too far away? And for the most part, there's probably going to be a testing clinic that's more convenient for them. Or will you also decide that, gosh, I'm getting some clicks from an area that, yes, I know that they're close to me. I didn't realize that they had the dollars to be able to do it. I didn't realize there was a marketplace there. Maybe I should put more dollars specifically in that zip code or specifically in that city. You should do some quick daily red flag checks. Has a cost per click gone way up? Periodically, Google will just flip out on their own and they'll start looking for keywords they feel are aligning keywords. And that's where you need to go through and use those negative keywords, but you have to be sure, does something look wrong? Did something change? Did search volume go way up or way down? Does it look as though a new competitor is coming to the marketplace and it's really increased the cost per click, so I'm getting half of the visibility that I was getting before? So it's really look at that just to be sure. It only takes a moment. And then look at those weekly optimizations. Really focus on those high performance keywords that seem to be working. And what I mean by that is, and I'll show this kind of a little bit further down here, you're able to get into your campaign and see what's performing the best from a keyword perspective in relation to, say, conversions. Go in and, hey, should we really be focusing more on that? There are a couple of individual ad groups that we should shut off that they just don't seem to be working as well because the keywords are slightly different. Really make sure that you're looking at those negative keywords on a consistent basis, and make sure you're pausing. Don't waste budget. Don't just set it and forget it and waste budget. And then look at that reporting on a monthly basis to see what seems to be working well. Really kind of dig in, because you can do these daily and weekly quick checks, but really take a good half hour, 45 minutes and dig through your reporting and figure out what's working, what's not. Determine what's happening in that next month or that next quarter that you may want to add some more budget or reduce some budget because you know things are gonna go down somewhat. Okay. If you're looking at kind of some keywords to consider building a campaign, and I put a whole bunch of individual kind of ads that came up, but you're going to want to build ad campaigns that are DNA based individually, paternity, ancestry, if you do anything like that. But there's people that are really looking for things that are more infidelity based, or they may be doing DNA testing because they want to see what the prevalence is for weight issues within their just DNA sequence as a whole. It looks like I just had something come in from Ted. Let's see, I pay a certain amount per month for Google Ads. How can I tell when during the month that expires? That's a good question. In the perfect world, Ted, what you would do is you would build out a campaign every month, and you would put a daily budget out there. And what I mean by that is if you have a $500 a month campaign, you divide that up by 30, and that shows that you'd have $16 to spend per day. Then what you have to look at, and just for this, I'm going to jump down to this next slide here. You'll see here on this slide, and this is a geographic area, but what I'm going to focus on here is this CPC, which is cost per click. This is showing within these areas how much it costs each time for this specific client, for each time somebody clicked. So if you look at this, it looks like it's roughly about $3 per click here. And just so you guys know, DNA testing, depending on your marketplace, can range anywhere from $1.50 to even as high as $12 per click, depending on what the competition is. But Ted, what I look at with this is I have $16 to spend per day. I divide that by this average cost per click of $3. That means I can get 5 clicks per day. The reason that you want to spread it out on a daily basis throughout the month is if you just tell Google, spend it as quickly as you can spend it, you may go through that budget in the first 3 or 4 days of the month and you'll have no budget left. So you have to make sure you set it up as a daily budget so Google can look at that and say, okay, I know I'm going to spend $15, $20, $50 per day, very specifically. And then when that budget runs out, you won't be able to have any more, but that will give you consistency throughout the month. And then what that will also allow you to do is, as you look at reporting, see exactly what that daily budget is giving you from a reach perspective. And I'll jump into that in just a moment as well. Okay. But kind of going back to this, we literally will develop 15 to 35 different ads for you, and that's what you should do too, because you want your ads to try to be as really specific. If it's immigration versus paternity, you need a different ad group. If it's sneak peek versus infidelity, you need a different ad group, because you need to speak to that, because again, you want to make sure that your ads themselves are speaking very specifically to what the consumer is looking for. And equally important, make sure that you have those keywords and those specific targets in there based on what Google knows that consumer is looking for, because that's going to make Google determine your ad is a better written ad than somebody else's, and they're going to rank you higher in the ability for your ad to appear. Okay. I talked about the geographic data. I'm going to actually run down. Do I have another? Here's what I was going to look at. The other piece that I was talking about was that search impression share. These are actual some live campaigns that we have going, and you'll see that they vary widely in cost, $2,000, $7,000, and we looked at this over kind of a 3-month period. Some markets spend a heck of a lot more than other markets. Here's a market that only spends $500. They only spend a couple $100s a month on it. Here's a market that spends $10,000. They spend about $2,500, $3,000 a month on their DNA campaign. And you'll see what kind of conversions they get, and you'll see what the cost per click is. I mean, you'll see these are $2.50. In this marketplace, it's $10. It's a really competitive marketplace. Then you'll see in these other areas here, what this is showing by search impression volume is for every 100 people that are searching in this market, with this budget that he has going, he's reaching about 42 of every one of those 100 people. In this market, for what they're spending, they're reaching almost 35% of the market. You'll see down here, they're only reaching 10%. And this person here who's spending a very small amount, they're reaching less than 10% of the marketplace, anywhere from 3 to 4% of the market. And then what you have to determine at that point is, are the conversions really matching up with the number of people that are coming in and actually performing a test with you? And that's what we really want to work with you on to determine, is that ROI there? Back to this one here, when you're able to look at reporting consistently, you're able to look at what each one of the search terms are, or the keyword search terms are, and we'll look at this based on how many conversions are coming in. And when you look at reporting on your own, or you look at reporting with us, there will be 20, 50 plus pages that we will look at all these search terms to determine, okay, what seems to be working. Like you see this one here, it had 18 impressions, it got 1 click. It didn't get a conversion. Do we need to do something different with the ads that are showing up just with DNA testing, or are people doing something different? I mean, this one here is very specific about what it's stating, but we look through these search terms to see, one, whether it's getting a lot of clicks but not getting conversions, because if it's getting a lot of clicks and you're spending money but it's not getting conversions, we probably need to either change those ads or turn them off. Something needs to happen. If we see that we are getting a lot of conversions related to a specific search term, we may double down on those search terms to make sure that we have as many opportunities for Google and the consumer to find ads for us related to that, or we may put more budget towards it. Okay. I think that is it. Any other questions that I can answer specifically? And I put some extra info in here, but I know Amy already went over this in the beginning, but any other questions that I can answer right now? I guess let me then just run back up here. I'm going to run back up to this very first page. The things that we went over today are very much in that people are ready to take action. They are ready very specifically to make a decision traditionally based on Google algorithms within the next 24 to 48 hours. That's why I presented this to you today, because these are the lowest of the funnel. These people are most ROI friendly than anything else that you're doing, and most anything else that you can do is going to be further up the funnel where you're doing more of a billboard. I mean, the way I talk about the vast majority of the other type of advertising, even though it's digital and it's a little bit more targeted, is if you're driving around and you see a billboard, very few people suddenly pull off and call because they saw something on a billboard right then. That billboard is there to create awareness for later. The other analogy that I use consistently is, I don't know what percentage of you know how many people or what percentage of the American public purchase a car every single year. It's a very small amount. It's only 8 to 9% of the total public are going to purchase a car every single year. But think about how much car advertising, automotive advertising, truck advertising, anything that you see on a consistent basis, they are spending a lot of their money on this awareness interest at the top, because they need to build that trust. They need to build all those things. So anything else you do is going to be more at the top of the funnel. These two areas down here, those people are much more ready to go and ready to make a purchase much more consistently in that 24 to 48 hour period than pretty much anything else you can do. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kenny. This was an excellent presentation. Again, for the attendees, a copy of the slide deck as well as a recording of this session will be shared about an hour after today's webinar. You will receive an email with that recording link and handout. And on the last slide of the deck, you will see Kenny's contact information, phone number, and email. Thank you very much for attending today's session.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.